Good morning to you. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to our weekly tropical weather outlook video. Today, Saturday, April 26, 2025. Let's start off with the countdown this week till June 1st, when the start of the Atlantic hurricane season will be. We are now, as of today, officially 36 days, but if you want to count the hours, we're 35 days and 15 hours and now 14 minutes to go till June 1st will be upon us and the hurricane season will start rapidly approaching. We're now under 40 days, and in just a matter of a few days here, we'll also be under 30 days till hurricane season starts. So time is coming up very quickly, and hurricane season will be with us in just a matter of weeks now. Let's start off this video, this weekly video, with a look at a satellite imagery of the Atlantic. We typically start off with the sea surface temperature anomalies, but I thought I might do something different this week. And you can see over the Atlantic a very nice shot as the sun rises, occurring over the western hemisphere. You could see not a lot of cloud cover over the MDR, and that's to be expected, obviously, because we're in April. We're not in June or July or August. We don't yet have these, tropical waves coming off the coast of Africa. And usually, even in June and July, they don't really develop. But, once we get to like May or June, we start getting tropical waves to come off the coast of Africa. And they're also not that weak as well early on in the season, too. But the bottom line is MDR is definitely very dry. You can also see, especially with a lot of this cloud cover streaming over the eastern Caribbean, moving very fast in a west-northwestward direction. You can see that's definitely indicative of a lot of strong upper level shear, as typical for this time of year because it's April. We're not yet in hurricane season. So nice and quiet over the Atlantic right now. It'll be very interesting to see over the next several weeks how we start to see the Atlantic, naturally begin to transform and eventually get into hurricane season mode. And another way you could kind of look at that is by looking at the 850 millibar vorticity. And I'm showing these maps because I guess this is more of a preview of some of the things we'll be looking at once we actually get into hurricane season, and that includes something like the 850 millibar vorticity. And obvious, as you saw with the satellite imagery, with nothing in the MDR, look at the vorticity in the MDR right now, and there's also not really much happening as well. Once again, we're still in April, and since we're still in the off season, you still see a lot of the energy in the mid latitudes. We have one low pressure system, where this is definitely some sort of system that's over southeastern Canada and the northeast. And I can attest that we kind of have some gloomy weather here in New York City today, so that definitely makes sense. And there's also, looks like there's probably a big system in the northern Atlantic near Greenland as well. Bottom line, there's still lots of energy in the mid latitudes, and obviously not that much energy yet in the deep tropics. But watch as we head over the next several weeks and as we begin to ease our way into hurricane season, how we start to see a lot of this mid latitude energy go away, and eventually we start to see a lot more energy, obviously associated with tropical waves and such, start appearing down here in the deep tropics. That's going to happen very soon, and we're just weeks away from it. That transition period starting to occur as well. Now let's move on to the sea surface temperature anomalies, kind of going back on course with how we typically do things every single week. Updated as of April 24th, so 2 days behind from where we are today, but I'm pretty sure that really wouldn't make that much of a difference. Starting off in the Atlantic, what do we notice? Generally warmer than normal throughout most of the Atlantic. Still have some of these cooler patches off of Eastern Africa, although that might change soon, because I've seen quite a bit of people talk about over the next several weeks potentially some warming occurring in the Atlantic as we start heading in a more negative NAO pattern. And that's generally a pressure pattern type situation in the Atlantic. The NAO, the North Atlantic Oscillation, is going to enter a negative phase as we head into May. That will help weaken the Bermuda high and the Azores high, and hopefully, or not hopefully, because that would set up potentially for if the Atlantic does warm up, which I'm pretty sure it will definitely put us in a better position for an active hurricane season. But generally getting at the idea that a lot of people are kind of noting that we might see some warming occur in the Atlantic over the next several weeks as we head into May. I certainly expect it. I definitely didn't expect a lot of these anomalies here to remain all the way till June and July and August, and especially once we get into July and August and the African monsoon starts turning on, you'll start to see the Atlantic warm up a lot anyways. But obviously we still have these anomalies here. Generally warm through the Caribbean and Gulf as well. The Gulf has really been warm this entire winter. And then off the southeast coast, kind of have some of these cooler anomalies. Definitely see the Gulf Stream peaking out, but interestingly enough, a lot of cooler anomalies in the northwestern Atlantic too. That's definitely not been the case over the last several years, so maybe that's something we'll have to watch. In the Pacific, not really anything at all that stands out. We don't have any overwhelming cold anomalies, and definitely no overwhelming warm anomalies. And also very interesting to see a lot of these colder anomalies here in the subtropical Pacific too, especially off the southwestern coast of the United States in the Baja Peninsula. But generally, as I've been saying over the last several weeks, really not much indication of El Nino forming. And you could certainly see that we don't really have much of anything in terms of overwhelming anomalies in the Pacific, and we're now in late April. And I said this before, and I'll repeat it again. If you really don't see any sign of El Nino developing right now, especially now that we're in spring, if there's not an El Nino already, beginning to develop, we're already beginning to see the transition signs right now. You can sure as hell bet that we're probably not going to get an El Nino, at least in time to really impact this hurricane season in any truly significant way. And that's pretty much where we are at right now, late April, and generally looking at neutral in the Pacific, and hurricane season is just several weeks away. So it looks like we're gonna be heading into hurricane season with a generally neutral Pacific. And just to kind of give you an idea of how things are, I thought I'd compare to how things were, comparing now to the last 2 years, starting off with a comparison to last year just to kind of see where we are, this year versus last year. And boy, have we, boy, are things different. Definitely a lot warmer last year, especially in the Atlantic. And that's part of why there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of, I guess, reservation for this hurricane season, because notice how warm we were in the Atlantic this time last year. Truly record warm anomalies, especially through the MDR, just widespread. Look at this. And it's kind of incredible to look back at 1-2 degrees Celsius. I mean, the entire deep tropics was at least a degree Celsius above normal. But especially in the eastern Atlantic, we had anomalies 1, 2, widespread 2, and maybe even some 3 degrees Celsius anomalies throughout the eastern Atlantic. And then you also had kind of the classic signature of very concentrated warmth in the deep tropics, and then in the subtropics, much cooler anomalies. And even the Pacific too, we were quite a bit warmer, even though you were starting to see a lot of these cooler anomalies begin to pop up in the Eastern Pacific as we were transitioning this time last year from El Nino to La Nina, or at least kind of a cool neutral, which is what we had for most of the year. And then eventually, as we got towards the end of the year, we then got to a La Nina. Although very interestingly enough, how this kind of cooler patch off the southwest coast of the United States in the Baja Peninsula is the same this year, kind of the negative PDO. And last year's hurricane season in the Pacific was really not that active. So, maybe that might be something to watch for this year, is how active the Pacific is, because if it's not very active, that could certainly also kind of be something to watch for in terms of whether or not the Atlantic might take over because of that. Because usually when the Pacific is not active, the Atlantic is. And especially considering the fact that we won't have an El Nino this year, will be very interesting to notice. But one thing, as I did want to point out, definitely cooled down. I mean, it's almost like night and day almost in the Eastern Atlantic, and a lot of people are kind of taking notice to that, and because of it, doubting this hurricane season. And once again, to those I say, um, I really wouldn't worry about how the Atlantic is right now, because trust me, especially once we get into, I mean, really next month, but especially as we get into July and August when the African monsoon begins to turn on, and especially as we head into the peak of the hurricane season, this really wouldn't matter, because it's going to start to warm up anyways. And I mean, specifically for the early season, anyways, most of these anomalies, generally in the Eastern Atlantic, don't matter because we really don't have that much development, anyways, in the Eastern Tropical Atlantic early on in the season. It's really, once again, in the Western Atlantic, closer to where we are here in the Caribbean, Gulf, and then maybe off the Southeast coast. That's where we really look at early on in the hurricane season, anyways, for development. But how about, so we compared it to last year, how about 2023, a year where, I mean, it's especially interesting to look at the Pacific because 2023, we had a very strong El Nino that year. And this is this time last year. Let's go back to this year, and boy, what a difference there is. Lots of warmth already beginning to build by this time in 2023. Look at these anomalies. Very, very warm off the coast of South America. We had the El Nino that year kind of start in the Eastern Pacific, and then the anomalies slowly begun to spread westward, and then eventually we ended up with a really strong El Nino that year, and also a very warm Atlantic. It was something from 2023 until last year where we had really, really warm anomalies in the Atlantic. It was a very interesting setup. And because of the fact that we had a very warm Atlantic that year, if you recall, we also had a very active hurricane season in 2023. We had 20 storms, despite the fact that we had a very strong El Nino. And obviously, compare that to this year. Obviously, we're not nearly as warm as we were in 2023 in the Atlantic, but especially in the Pacific. And this is really the point that I want to drive home. Look at how much warmer we were in 2023 at this time when we were actually developing into an El Nino compared to this year, also night and day. So really just drives the point home that we're not really, there's really no sign of an El Nino occurring. And I'm going to continue to, write it home every single week, because as long as there is no El Nino this hurricane season, that's kind of one of the most important things that really puts us in a position for, I mean, it's really an important factor, because it really puts us in a position into potentially this hurricane season being active. And that's obviously important because if we do have an active hurricane season, that would obviously put us in a not good position, especially for impacts, because obviously if there's more activity, there's more chance for more impacts in the Atlantic. And I also bring this up every week. The SOI, that once again too, especially over the last several weeks, still remaining positive. We've kind of seen a downtrend in the SOI over the last week or so. The latest 30-day average is at 6 points. The 90-day average is at 7 points. Still positive though. And we are now into late April, about to head into the month of May. And you can take a look at the latest daily contributions, at least over the last several weeks. You can see why we've kind of seen a downtrend recently, a lot of negatives beginning to pop up in the daily contribution. But at least in terms of the overall average over the last several weeks, we're still in a positive SOI. And that's important because if we're in a positive SOI, that means the atmosphere is still responding more like a La Nina. So we're again, another factor that really kind of, drives home the fact that we're really not transitioning or heading quickly into an El Nino. And you can look at the T-depth anomalies, the subsurface sea surface temperature anomalies in the Pacific too, stretching all the way from February. We had quite a bit of warmth or cold anomalies in the Pacific, and that's kind of gone away. But you also had quite a bit of these warm anomalies in the Eastern Pacific develop, especially as we were last month. We saw quite a bit of warming in the Eastern Pacific, and that also has kind of gone away too. If you look at the far, the top right corner, you saw quite a bit of warming, and then over the last several weeks, that's kind of gone away. And especially as we head from February up until now into April, if you look at the subsurface, once again, even there too, not really much in terms of overwhelming cold or warm signals in the subsurface. And now it's kind of centered, it's kind of stopped at April 18th, the latest subsurface anomaly map. And, you kind of have some of these colder anomalies in here, still generally leaning maybe towards cooler neutral. And then you have these warm anomalies here in the Western Pacific, but they're really not advancing eastward. And in general, if you just look at the Pacific, at least for the most part, there really is no overwhelming cold or warm signals in the Pacific. And once again, looks like neutral. And that's kind of been the case over the last several weeks, looking like neutral. And at least if you look at the subsurface, we also see generally neutral as well, nothing overwhelming with that. And then finally, looking at the zonal wind anomalies to kind of get an idea of where we are going in the future. If you look at the Pacific too as well, because this is the latest zonal wind anomaly map. I think this is actually from yesterday. Then you go into the future as we head into the month of May in the Pacific. Also, once again, nothing overwhelming in terms of zonal wind anomalies, especially with, no major trade wind bursts or no major westerly wind events being indicated. And by the way, this is the EPS zonal wind anomalies. Nothing major, even with that, as we head into the month of May in the Pacific. So bottom line, there really is no major signal for any major ENSO event right now. And it's important now that especially we're heading into the month of May, and it looks like we're not going to have any major ENSO event, especially El Nino. And I'm going to continue to say it once again, and I'm going to say it right now, no El Nino is very important for this hurricane season. As long as we don't have an El Nino, I can assure you that'll automatically put us in a better position for this hurricane season. And it looks like that's the way things will be setting up for right now, especially now that we're heading into May and hurricane season is just upon us in a few weeks. And there's really not much happening with the ENSO right now. So that's a quick look at, what's going on in terms of tropics this week. What about weather? Just to wrap it up really quickly, weather here in the United States, not much happening, at least for today. We kind of have some of these red flag warnings over the Southwest, also some flooding over Texas. There are flood watches in effect. Not much happening today, but severe weather is going to heat up once again as we head into this week. Looks like we might have quite a significant severe weather event over portions of the northern Midwest. And I'll show you that right here on the Storm Prediction Center. This is the day 3 map for the severe weather outlook. And it's going to be a pretty significant event because this is day 3 and we have a moderate chance over portions of Iowa, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. And usually we don't really see moderate chances issued till day 2. Or, you usually, when you talk about a moderate chance, it's usually given on the day that it happens, or at least day 2. But if it's day 3, you definitely know it's going to be a significant event. And this is for, I believe, Monday. So you want to mark your calendar for this. And they don't have tornado and wind and hail chances yet because this is in the day 3 outlook, but I'm pretty sure those chances will be significant. We're going to have some sort of low pressure system that'll develop, and then we'll have a pretty favorable setup for severe weather as we head into the beginning of next week. And then it persists into day 4. You have a very large chance of 15%. So that's roughly a slight risk, extends all the way from Texas into the Northeast, into upstate New York. So quite a widespread area where we might see severe weather next week. And then it lasts into day 5 too, although it's only over Texas. And then from day 6 to 8, the probability is too low. So severe weather season as well is also ramping up. We're in the heart of severe weather season. And obviously once we get past that, in just a few weeks, once again, we'll be in hurricane season. And once again, judging by ENSO and the fact that we really won't have any major ENSO events, where it really doesn't look like any major ENSO event is setting up as we head into hurricane season. It'll definitely be interesting to see how that shapes up, especially it'll be interesting to see how this hurricane season shapes up. But we'll find out in a few weeks. Once again, approaching under 30 days, and this is the last video outlook of April. Next week, next Saturday, when we do this weekly video outlook again, it'll be May, and we'll be less than a month till hurricane season starts. So it's fast approaching, and it'll definitely be interesting to see how ENSO shapes up and how hurricane season will shape up in just a matter of a few weeks. That's going to wrap it up for today's video, though. If you like what you saw today, I would really appreciate it. As I always do every single week, I really would appreciate it if you like, comment, and especially subscribe. And if you're interested in these weekly videos, and if you're also interested in my channel as well, because I just mentioned we have severe weather upcoming, and I don't just do videos on tropics, especially if we do have major severe weather events. I also talk about them as well. So if you want to stay tuned for that, would really appreciate it if you like, comment, subscribe, turn the notification bell on too, so you can get whenever I upload a video the second I upload it. And also follow me on Twitter too, at Danilo Evangelista, same name as I have here on YouTube. Thanks for watching. Stay safe. Enjoy your weekend. Peace, love, and kindness to you all. We'll probably talk again very soon, given that severe weather is incoming. And if not, talk to you again next week.